just a second. And I know we're getting on to the Thanksgiving holiday. So if you want to tell us what you're going to eat for Thanksgiving, because we should not be gathering. So what are you eating for Thanksgiving? I know I did one of the Thanksgiving boxes from Clover because I'm not cooking anything.
Such a good idea.
I'm so excited.
Okay, as everybody's coming in here, we can get started. Hi, everyone. We'll start with a public health update. As of Thursday, November 19th, there are 24,861 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Boston residents. I wanted to do just a little bit of a deeper dive on some of the numbers here so that you can kind of see what the data is looking like. There are an average of 2,340 new Bostonians who have been tested in recent days. And that average number of daily positive tests went up to 224 and is still climbing. So the result of all of that testing was a positive test rate of 9.6%. That's the cumulative rate that you can see in the blue line up top on this chart. And right below that, you can see an orange line, which is the current community positivity rate, excluding colleges. So that's our non-cumulative rate for all tests in the city of Boston. And then the green line below that is the current rate, including colleges. So colleges are doing such frequent testing that if we include their numbers, it takes our average positivity rate down. So what we've been using for the most part is that orange line for city purposes. You can see to the right that we have the goal of a 4% positivity rate. And so we want to see numbers steadily going down towards that goal over the course of more than 1 week. So that's what really will show us that there's a downward trend in positivity rates. And that 5% threshold number that you see in the box, that's what informs decisions about closures and restrictions. So our rate being over 5% is part of why we're still in that first phase of step 3 of reopening. And you can actually see the 5% as like a dotted black line across the chart there. This is all public data. So if you want to follow this at a deeper level, you can get daily updates by going to the Boston Public Health Commission website, and I can throw that in the chat in a minute. Obviously, the main takeaway here is that our numbers are still creeping up. They're particularly high in some neighborhoods. 7 neighborhoods actually had positivity rates over 10%, with East Boston, Dorchester, and Hyde Park experiencing the highest rates. And we know from contact tracing that the 2 main locations where the virus is spreading are through workplaces and through gatherings in people's homes. So just as people are getting just tired of being stuck inside and being isolated, and with the weather getting colder, we're just seeing people are getting too casual about spending time together, and you think you're in a pod with people, but they're actually mingling with other people, and you're all going to the grocery store. So you're really not in a pod together. It only counts if you're really quarantined with the people that you live with. So in light of that, if you go to the next slide, we are really asking people to take this seriously over Thanksgiving and over any winter holidays, any festivities that you're planning. Please only be in person with members of your current household. Avoid large gatherings, even with friends and families. So as a reminder, indoor gatherings should be 10 people or fewer. You should be wearing a mask when you're not eating or drinking. Everyone should still be practicing physical distancing 6 feet apart. You should be opening windows and thinking about how to improve your ventilation, even if it's cold outside, or gather outside. And anyone who travels out of state needs to follow state guidelines on quarantine and testing. And lastly, the mayor was really clear this week in his public comments about guidance for college students. So if college students are going home for Thanksgiving, they should stay home after that and not be returning. This is just we've got to take this seriously and buckle down for the next few weeks, because we really don't want to see those numbers going back up or continuing to go up. And we know that it's going to take at least a couple of weeks to see what the effects are of the holidays. which means that we probably will, our update, not the next update, but the update after for the Friday meeting is when we'll be able to report back out on that and see kind of how we did. Before I move on from this, any questions about testing, getting tested, about Thanksgiving, about turning away your loved ones during this time? I think we're just all going to be on Zoom with each other for a little while. Yeah, and we're all becoming public health experts, to John's point. Okay. All right, that is it for me. Next slide. Emily, take it away.
Okay, thanks. So we have entered the lame duck session of Congress, which means that they know whether or not they're coming back next session. And then the problem is, sorry, I just got distracted. Hello, friends, I'm back. Okay, so the problem is during a lame duck session, traditionally very little happens, right? And then we're running into the issue that a lot of the provisions that were included in CARES Act, including the Paycheck Protection Program, unemployment assistance, and then the the EIDL loans are all going away as of December 31st. That also includes, incidentally, and I'll get to this in a second, all of the CARES money that was allocated, whether it be state and local aid or whether it be through a specific federal agency, has to be spent by December 31st. So you may notice that they haven't done anything to renew Paycheck Protection Program or unemployment assistance and pandemic unemployment assistance, and that is a big problem. So while there's very little hope, we're hearing from our partners in DC that Congress will actually do something before the 31st, that doesn't mean that our issues and the need to reach out and make sure that we are staying visible with our members of Congress is not incredibly necessary right now. And so on the screen, you will see hyperlinks to 3 different email campaigns that you can be a part of. So the first one is put together through the Coalition of Performing Arts Advocates. The second one is the NEVA, which is independent venues and for-profit venues. And then the last one is the Americans for the Arts Action Fund legislation. So if you feel more inclined, if you feel like you fit one of those categories in a better way than the other, pick your favorite, and please make sure that all of our members of Congress know that this is a real thing and that it's affecting constituents in their district. Christina, next slide, please. Okay, so now let's talk about the state. So the House and the Senate both have passed their versions of the budget. The Senate passed their version on Thursday, and now it moves to conference committee. And this is where they appoint conference committee members. I think the most reliable information is telling me those conference committee members will be appointed next week. And then they negotiate between the 2 versions until they get one that is the same, right? The good news for us is that the Mass Cultural Council budget, which is the largest public investment of arts and public investment to arts and culture, in both the House and the Senate version was at $18.2 million, not $18.20, it's $18.2 million. And because both the amount and the language is exactly the same, it won't be conference and it's going to go through. So what the legislature is going to pass a state budget for fiscal year 21 that includes $18.2 million for arts and culture, right? The other issue that we took a look at is Chapter 70, which is local aid education funding, is going to be funded in both versions. It's also at $5.3 billion. So the big thing that I want to talk to you about, and why I was a little late to this call, is that just a few hours ago, the Mass Cultural Council released information about the $10 million Cultural Organization Economic Recovery Grant Program. So this is part of Governor Baker's Partnerships for Recovery plan. It is the CARES Act money that Massachusetts got being spent. This includes both $2 million that the legislature included and required for small, being under 10 million, under 10 staff member or cultural organizations, as well as an additional 8 that goes to everyone. There's a great FAQ that's up, and the Mass Cultural Council will be administrating this grant. So it is a partnership with the Office of Housing and Economic Development, and it's through Governor Baker's recovery plan. The grants are now open. I'm going to post a hyperlink into the chat. Oh, thank you, Kata. You already did it. The deadline is December 11th. I just want to, once this was announced in the vacuum of actual real information, there was a lot of misinformation. So one of the things that I just want to clarify is cultural organizations that do not own facilities are eligible for this grant program, all right? So it is not just our organizations located in Boston eligible. Absolutely. Are organizations outside of Boston eligible? Absolutely. If your organization is in Massachusetts and you are a cultural organization, you should take a look at this document. It is for nonprofit arts and cultural organizations. So there are a number of different grant programs and a number of different relief programs for for-profit entities that have been included in this larger program to take a look at. The deadline is December 11th, and the two things I want to just highlight is do not wait to apply. I think the Mass Cultural Council has done a really great job in their materials of making it easy to apply. And more importantly is there's a science to this. There's $10 million. We all know there is 10 million, there is an exponentially more large amount needed for recovery and relief. And part of the work of these grants will also be documenting how much need was out there. So it is important that we be able to say, the Mass Cultural Council very successfully was able to distribute $10 million, and here's what was actually needed by the field, right? So please apply. Okay, next slide, Christina, and I promise this is my last one. So just two other things I want to flag on the state level. So the first one is, you may have heard about it, the MBTA is proposing a number of service cuts. These include the subway ending after midnight instead of 1 a.m. and reduced train frequency. They're going to completely eliminate the service ferry, or ferry service, excuse me, and then they are really reducing commuter rail or the community rail, and eliminating weekend service for the commuter rail. We know that transportation issues, housing issues, food stability issues are arts issues, and this is a place where we as a creative community can lend our voices and talk about why there is an economic injustice to eliminating public transportation. So there are two ways that you can participate in this. The first one is to share your written feedback. There's a hyperlink there. And then on December 2nd at 6 p.m., there is a public meeting where you can share your comments, your respectful comments about what this means. So that, please be a part of that work with us. It is important. And then just, you know, the Massachusetts legislature is also technically in a lame duck session too, right? And so they have a big tranche of work to complete before the legislative session ends on December 31st. And it includes 4 bills that we just should be paying attention to. The first one is that economic development bond bill, where there's $31 million of combined between the two versions of authorized spending for the arts and cultural sector. There's a transportation bond bill, of which the MBTA issue is a part of. And then there's a police reform bill. My goodness, I'm so sorry about all the typos today, friends. So there's a police reform bill, and then there's only one environmental bill. So those are all things that are happening and that we can that we'll be monitoring and taking a look at. And obviously that economic development bill, we're paying very close attention to, and we'll alert you as to opportunities to engage with that. All right, thank you. Thank you for your patience all today. It is good to see your faces.
Thanks so much, Emily. I think I'm going to hand it off to Cara back to start our little conversation about RIRJ. And I think we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, Ceci, are you kicking us off?
Actually, it would be me. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Chandra Mendes Ortiz. I'm the Executive Director of Artward Bound at Massachusetts College of Art and Design. And I'm here today with a fantastic group of people to tell you about our 2-year journey with Radical Imagination for Racial Justice, which is a grant program for Boston area artists of color. It's been a 2-year journey with the national cohort and in partnership with the City of Boston, MassArt, and CERDNA. And I hope you guys are ready for some good news, because we have a lot of good news for you today. So what we're gonna do is take a little bit of your time and just kind of walk through what it is, why it matters, and answer any questions that you have. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, my name is Chandra. I'm the director of Artward Bound. Artward Bound is a free 4-year college access program in the arts for Boston area young artists of color. It's really designed to give them the tools that they need to thrive academically and artistically. I'm going to pass it off to my colleagues who can introduce themselves and their programs.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ceci Mendes Ortiz. I recognize a lot of faces. It's good to see you again. It was several months ago that Cara and I shared a little bit of what was upcoming around Radical Imagination for Racial Justice. So as Chandra said, we're excited to share our updates today. But again, my name is Ceci Mendes Ortiz, and I am the Executive Director of the Center for Art and Community Partnerships at MassArt. The CACP, as we're called, we connect people and communities through very community-driven, inclusive, joyful art and design experiences to radically expand people's access to those experiences. So we do this through our Spark the Artmobile. We do this through MassArt student employment in community-based nonprofits throughout the city of Boston. And we do it through connecting community-based organizations and our faculty and students through curriculum to bring art and design to the fore of any and all of our considerations, projects, visions, dreamings. So together, Artward Bound and the Center for Art and Community Partnerships we've been the MassArt part of the MassArt and City of Boston collaboration. So it's good to see you all again. And Cara?
And I'm Cara Elliott Ortega with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. We're the third part of this partnership representing the City of Boston, and I'm really excited to be doing this work with MassArt over the course of 3, hopefully more years.
So a few things that just to kind of reground us in this opportunity, this incredible opportunity for Alana and BIPOC identified artists in Boston, is MassArt in the city. We received $1.2 million over the course of three years, as Cara said, to bring our version, Boston's version of Radical Imagination for Racial Justice to life in Boston. So this is really a privilege and an honor that between MassArt and the city, through the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, that we're really stewarding these resources via CERDNA to artists on the ground in collaboration with their communities to radically imagine racial justice with their communities. And we take this really, really deeply seriously, especially as two publics, right? A state university and a city government. And imagine that, a state university and a city government to do something radical. It's been quite a journey. It's been incredibly inspiring and a huge learning process as well. The other huge piece of this, or another huge piece of this, is that this is philanthropy. This strives to be philanthropy geared toward justice and not simply or just charitable giving. So our partners in this work at CERDNA are the executive director of the Thriving Cultures program, Francisco Javier Torres, and his colleague Robert Smith Jr. III. It's been very much an iterative learning process, not just with our colleagues at CERDNA, but also as members of a cohort across the United States with 10 other regranting partners. And so that's the last piece here we just wanted to lift up, is really leveraging our relationships together while also participating in this national cohort to learn with and from our colleagues who are in vastly different locales, regions, and areas of the USA and also Puerto Rico. So we are, we take very seriously our role in shaping aspects of the national conversation, particularly around racial justice at a time of such global reckonings around these issues. So next slide, please. And just want to give a sense, many of you may be very familiar and or less so with these organizations, but each of the boxes in blue represent the 3 municipalities across the US that are involved as regrantors. So City of Boston and MassArt is one of the pairs. There's only 2 other municipalities, the City of Oakland in partnership with the East Bay Community Foundation and the Akanadi Foundation, and then the City of Jackson, Mississippi is partnering with Community Aid and Development Organization. And then the other logos of organizations here represent regions from, regranting organizations across the South, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, the Greater South, Detroit, New York City, Indian Country, the entire Southwest and Puerto Rico, Chicago, and organizations such as, Creative Capital that are national funding partners and others that are regional funding partners. So we feel like we're in great company and learning a ton and bringing what learnings from across the country to Boston and sharing what is happening in Boston with our colleagues across the US. And next slide, please.
So we're really excited about this partnership, which is really a different kind of partnership for the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, and a deep one, I would say. This program is really aligned with both of our institutions' equity work and how this question of how large public organizations are really thinking about their role in furthering racial justice. This is a priority for MassArt through their strategic plan and is a part of their 10-year horizon goals. And of course, is a huge priority with the city, with the creation of the new equity cabinet, the declaration of racism as a public health crisis in the city of Boston. And we're really seeing this partnership as a model for how we as arts offices and institutions can concretely move this work forward in Boston and create more just practices as well. So this is also as much about process and setting up this partnership and the process of this forming this grant as it is about the grants themselves. And we are particularly focused on the community building aspect of this and how we can influence grant making in Boston and beyond. And that's a big part of the learning journey that we're on with this and that we want to share with the field and with you all. So how do we build this kind of practice? What are the changes that we can make now to bring racial equity to grant making, to policy decisions in a way that really centers BIPOC artists and relationship building? Go to the next slide. So when we got together on this, we started by articulating our shared values that we wanted to make sure would show up in every step of this work and how we did our work together. So the first one, as we've said, focusing on Alana and BIPOC artists and creatives. A huge piece of this, particularly with Artward Bound being a major partner, is strategically centering young people, designing a process that deconstructs silos. I know a lot of us on this call are familiar with a lot of these silos by discipline, age, neighborhood, organizations that tend to work together and others that don't. Working from a model of abundance, not a competition for limited resources. This is a really particular challenge with doing grant making, but this included making sure we were really paying people and sort of turning this into a jobs program as much as possible, building on what's worked, not replicating the status quo, centering joy and well-being, which was actually a requirement to include that in the grant making process. And yeah, knowing that we want to learn from each other and rely on the expertise that's coming from our own communities. Next slide.
So as you all know, building community, building family takes time. It takes you being earnest and sincere. It takes deep listening, it takes patience, and it takes time. For our journey, we of the national cohort, we're the startup. This is new in terms of this program. So we really wanted to kind of think deeply and partner with others from the very beginning of this journey. So we started off with a great advisory group, which was an intergenerational group of Boston area folks who were committed to justice and really wanted to kind of tease out, what does that mean for Boston? What does that mean for ourselves and each other? And can we really shift and change things? So we had really vibrant conversations July 15th of the year before. And really kind of thinking about kind of what has legs, what's needed in this moment, as well as making sure that young people see themselves as deciders and thought partners at every step of this journey. So when you think about a grant, especially if there are large dollars attached, many young people don't necessarily say, oh, that's for me. And we wanted to make sure that in the language, in the process, that we were really being inclusive, and they helped us build that out. So we also had a street team, which were our creative messengers, which were 8 youth throughout the city of Boston, who really helped us kind of check our language, check our thinking, and really worked with us to build out this program so that young people saw themselves in this grant opportunity. We also had a number of folks from our street team and our advisory also participate in our panels. And we had 24 people in 2 different panels, one for the 1K amount and another for the larger amounts, which were $25,000 and $40,000, really doing the work. So young people, people my age, people older, kind of going toe to toe with grappling with these issues, with really reflecting on the substance of what artists were offering in their proposals, thinking through feedback, 2 days of panels. And because we really believe in not extracting labor from people of color, but paying people what they are due, we basically created a jobs program. So, you know, equal work, equal pay. So everybody got $1,000 for their contribution in this process. And we also felt it was important to set that standard. I think as artists, many times we're asked to do things because we're passionate about the arts. Doesn't play for me, and I'm sure it doesn't play for you like that. So we wanted to really think about equity and wealth and justice, even financially, from the very beginning of this process, and making sure that youth saw themselves every step of the way. Next slide.
So in the same spirit of building a community, we really wanted to build a radically welcoming and accessible process, as Chandra and Cara mentioned. So just one slice, one sliver of a slice of this was, you know, deeply considering what are the touch points for all the applicants. And of course, this happened when we had gone entirely into our virtual spaces. So, you know, the usual things like the website and email and social. And as Chandra just shared, you know, if we had a lot more time for this presentation, we would share the endless hours of editing on huge sheets of paper as our advisory group and our street team, you know, we drafted language and they tore it up. They scribbled and scratched, and we shifted and we changed. And so that's what gets us to the RIRJ website that we have today. We also made some promo videos featuring street team and advisory group members. Our application was also accepting of narrative as well as video and audio submissions in terms of making that process accessible. We had countless office hours. So anyone, we'll share more about the numbers, but we had several hundred applications, and anybody who applied could sign up for office hours to get counsel or to have their questions answered about the feasibility of their ideas or the process or the application itself. We had 3 info sessions. One of them was entirely youth-led, by youth for youth. The others youth could be a part of for sure, and we're a part of creating, but this one, and we'll play a clip in a moment, is a youth session by youth. We've also offered feedback to any applicants who didn't receive a grant, which, as those of you involved in this kind of processes, is also something that it takes a lot of time to do that. And we really wanted those who saw themselves in this opportunity and who applied to still feel like they were a part of the RIRJ community as we continue to evolve. And so that sort of feedback and that sort of feedback loop is really important to us. Phase 2 applicants, so the people who became finalists for the larger grants, we had specialized technical support. So further office hours, further reviewing of their applications, and even a budget template that was created that we walked through. We learned that there's a lot of, learned and affirmed that there's a lot of grant trauma out there, both in terms of what is asked and how it's asked and how it's assessed. So we are in the process, or will be in the process soon, of doing some applicant surveys as well to continue learning about how we can improve as well. But could we please just play a short clip of this youth session?
And so one of the main aspects with the RIRJ grant is that we really want artists in all three different categories using community collaboration, because to move forward and to move Boston in your community and to really have this impact of a racially just, presence, is you have to collaborate with the community. It's a very huge thing. And the thing with community that can also be defined very broadly. It's a very self-determining thing. It's like where you put yourself in, what neighborhoods or what cities you find yourself in, with what people you surround yourself with. You can say that your school is a community and you want to work with your school, and that's.
Thank you. That's Rafael Andrade. He is a street team member and from Revere High School. So thanks to Raf for that. And next slide, please.
Okay, great. So as Ceci mentioned, we got over 300 applications for this program, which is really a lot, especially for a first-time opportunity. And we collected demographic information to see who we really reached. And we're happy to say that people really did see themselves in this process and felt like it was accessible to them. We did connect with Boston-based BIPOC artists, which you can see here. If we go to the next slide. About a quarter of applicants did not speak English as a first language, which is one way that we wanted to measure our reach through this process. And we were really excited to see about a quarter of applicants were also under the age of 24. Next slide. And then what I get really excited about is how many people applied who are at least outside of the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture kind of usual networks. More than half of applicants had not received any kind of support for their work in the last year. And more than half had not received any of the grants that are available for individual artists. And if in this region, they hadn't received any of those in the last 3 years. And that included, we asked about Live Arts Boston, city grants, NEFA grants, MCC fellowships. And this was really, I think, an important part of our process to reach people who, have not had access to this kind of funding and support before, or just felt like it wasn't for them. And I know not everyone on this call is in the habit of having to give out grants, but I think just, we get stuck in our networks so easily in our sense of who's here. And there are obviously a lot of people who wanted to do this work. And it was amazing to get this much of a reaction to the first year of the program.
So it brings us to this moment. We're super, super, super excited because we pretty much just selected our grantees for this year, and we're about to make our public announcement. So we have 16 grantees, 10 of them are at the $1,000 level and 6 at the $40,000 level. And also both the $1,000 and the $40,000 is intergenerational. So you have young folks, older folks, BIPOC artists who saw themselves in these opportunities. Of course, the ask of artists who are doing the 1K is much different than the ask of folks who are doing the 40K. But we really see us all as part of a learning cohort. So we will be kind of getting together throughout the whole year. Of course, there will be a public kind of kickoff event and a closing event, but we're really kind of thinking about how do we kind of as artists and thinkers really think about racial justice in Boston, really think about authentic community collaboration, really think radically and imaginatively about racial justice. So we're also developing a curriculum to work with those artists so they can work with each other as they kind of hold up these things, question their ideas, share best practices, and grow and learn together. So our public announcement is slated for November 30th or December 1st. We're super excited to roll up our sleeves and learn with them. This is the really exciting part of the work that has been kind of 2 years of dreaming to get to this space. And we hope that you join us in those public events. You'll definitely hear more about it. And also know that we are driving the car and building the car. So we're very transparent about that. We really are learning with the grantees and with the community. And we're going to hopefully take that learning into our ideas about how to scaffold and build year 2 and 3 of this program.
We just wanted to end with a few quotes from the people, the amazing, beautiful people who've been a part of the journey. So I'll just give a minute or so you can read these rather than be read to. Just wanted to share on the left an RIRJ applicant and grantee, and on the right, a quote from Harold Stewart, who's from the Theater Offensive and was one of our advisory group members. You know, again, there's so much of our work that what we do to measure the continual measurements of our successes and our challenges, and a big one for us, a big measure of have we created something special here, and how do we keep building on that, is really the feedback from applicants who, you know, this applicant on the left and grantee on the left, who really got, as many people did, a lot out of the one-on-one meetings. And I think it's also important to say that we learn so much from applicants applying. We learn through their questions, we learn through their critiquing, we learn through their considerations. And in some cases, especially in the earlier parts of the process, those conversations and those questions actually inspired us to adapt certain things. So the applicants actually changed us. The applicants changed the process for the better, and being able to kind of adapt and pivot in response in real time on the ground is very rewarding. And of course, you know, what Harold's saying on the right about being able to be a model for philanthropy and grant making, of which there are models for, but how can we be ever more people-centered in these processes? It's really important for this endeavor. And then one last quote from Shervina Geraldo. If you can go to the last slide, please. Shervina is a Snowden high school junior. She is also a member of Artward Bound, program at Mass Art that Chandra directs. And this is what she had to say about being a street team member and a panelist for our program. Just a lot of love and appreciation for the young people who are inheriting so much in this world, and still finding ways to be engaged, us with them, them with in the world, to have some positivity and optimism about the possibility and the future of change in our society and our greater world. It's very inspiring. So we hope this is inspiring for you as well. And I think that's our last slide.
Awesome.
We really mic drop on the young people.
Thank
There's
you.
nothing else to say.
Yes, it's a great place to end. Thank you both so much. And thank you, Cara, for also sharing as well. I do want to give a little bit of time. I believe, Abby, you're here from Tufts to talk a little bit about the grant we mentioned, the fund we mentioned last meeting. If you're still here, I'd love to.
Yeah, I got her.
Yeah, great, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting me present at this meeting, and thanks for, you know, it's just great to hear about the work of RIRJ, because I know that in our new grant making process, we'll hopefully be able to call on you and your learning to inform our learning. So that's exciting. So my name's Abby Satinski. I am the curator of exhibitions and programs at the Tufts University Art Galleries. And the Tufts University Art Galleries exist on multiple campuses. So we exist on our Boston campus, which is at SMFA, right next to MFA Boston, as well as in Medford. And we are just launching this brand new opportunity called the Collective Futures Fund. And essentially it is, it's a part of the regional regranting program of the Andy Warhol Foundation. So somewhat like CERDNA and the relationship to CACP and MassArt and the City of Boston, we are sort of the local partner for a national cohort of organizations doing regranting work in the area. The Warhol Fund has been doing this work for about, I don't know, 10-ish years, where they partner with a local arts organization in order to fund the small, the artist-run, the not nonprofit, artist-led activities like publications or public art projects or artist-run spaces, all the things that sort of exist under the radar, perhaps, and sort of exist in a realm of not being necessarily eligible for a lot of funding. So, so it started with the Warhol about 10 years ago with it was at 16 cities, and just this last, in October, they announced to 32 cities. So we as Boston we're one of the last cities to sign on, and Tufts University Art Galleries is a partner. And so at the direction of the foundation, the first giving that we're doing is that we're doing $60,000 to artists in the greater Boston area for emergency relief funds. And so we're giving 40 of those grants out at the amount of $1,500. So I thought, actually, if you don't mind, Christina, I could just share the website really quick. So let me, okay, I don't know if I can share screen. If not, we can just go back to the thing. I can do it now. Okay. So this is our website. I will say also that we're a university gallery. So we are really trying, and we just launched this with sort of a very short time window to get it out in public. So we're really excited to share this with folks and hopefully get it out as wide as possible to people that we haven't necessarily reached in the past. I'm just going to go a little bit to the About page just to show you that. So I explained already that it's this, these 40 grants at $1,500. I will say also, once we go through this funding moment, we are going to be launching a yearly $60,000 grant in the amounts of $2,500 up to $5,000 in the spring. And those will be for more project proposals, and those will be juried, and those will go to artist-run projects of various kind. And we will go through a kind of also an advisory process to think through our language and who we're reaching and what that is going to look like. But I just wanted to point that out to folks to look for us in the future, that in the spring we'll be offering these project grants. So just for application, just to show you, let's see, maybe I'll do the FAQ. We have very basic it's a very basic application, with the idea being that people are just self-identifying as artists and that they live in the counties identified here. So artists who reside within Greater Boston, practicing artists. And so when we say examples of creative work, we just mean a website, or you can email us a couple images, and that you are self-proposing that you are experiencing financial loss or hardship. We will not publicize the people that win this grant, so it's kept anonymous in that way. And let's see, and we're going to be dispersing these funds sorry, I want to go to the application, please. So basically the application is due until November 27th at midnight, and then we're going to be dispersing the funds in December. So yeah, so this is the grant, interface. It's really, it's we're not asking people to display financial hardship in any way, just sort of self, determine that this fund is for them. And then we are collecting demographic information, but that's to see who we're serving. And it's going to be a randomized lottery as to who gets the grant. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, you know, we just wanted this opportunity to be shared as widely as possible right now. We have about 150 applications thus far, and we're going to be giving out only 40, but we're definitely not reaching folks in all the counties. And, you know, we really want people to be aware of this opportunity. So that's my spiel for now. And yeah, just happy to be here. And, you know, we're working on it. We're pivoting and making it happen as fast as possible.
Thank you so much, Abby. So glad you could talk us a little bit through more about the fund. Awesome. I think I saw one question. John asked, without revealing too much, can you give a sense of the types of projects approved from the RIRJ? I know the announcement's coming soon, but maybe vaguely.
We're all looking at each other like who's going to try to tackle that. I think because it's such a small group of finalists, it's going to be hard for us to vaguely describe the projects, but we will send out a link to the press release as soon as it goes out and share it with you all. And I'm like also very anxious to want to celebrate them and share that with everybody. But we'll send it in a follow-up email when it's live.
Thanks, Cara. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions. I'm not seeing others in the chat. Just checking really quickly. Got one more. And for those who weren't able to, you aren't able to click in the slide, but Abby just put in the chat the link to the website. It's also going to be in the PowerPoint, which we'll send to everybody after the meeting. So just something to look for. Erica asked, are we staying in phase 3, part 1? Is there any discussion on further breaks for orgs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think permits or taxes. Yeah, I think we have to see a little bit where from a city side we are with the COVID funding, the CARES Act funding that the city does have. There's I think a deadline coming up for the city to actually spend that money. There were new small business grants that were just announced this week. So we are circling up now and kind of seeing, you know, what has gone out, what's still missing, what can we do with the time that we have remaining. Emily, I don't know, is there anything else on your end in terms of relief for organizations that should be on our radar? And I'm speaking to Emily and I don't actually know if she's still here.
Oh, still here, still here. Okay. I'm just taking a breath. So I don't think that there's nothing in the pipeline that I know about. I think that right now, there's a whole lot of holding our breath until the feds come through with some sort of relief package, if they do, but there's reason to believe they would. And between when that actually happens and between now and when that actually happens, there is a real sincere need for us to be sharing two things. One, we still exist and we are suffering. And two, that we contribute not only to the economic vibrancy of Massachusetts, but to the community cohesion. And here are some recent examples of the work that we continue to do under real duress. And I would say to those of you on a call, if you are the type that likes to write an op-ed, by all means, if you're the type who has a press agent, let's start placing some stories. We'll be working on that too. But I think we just need to set the conditions so that when the next sort of phase of potential recovery funding shows up, the arts are naturally at the top of the list of priorities. And those are the conversations that we are having every day.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, and this could be a way that we maybe spend some of our time in a future meeting, but while we're kind of in this in-between space of not knowing what other federal relief is happening and having to spend what's already come down, I think that we are at kind of an interesting point in terms of telling the story. Like people are assuming that we're in some way beyond immediate relief, like for individuals, and we know that that's not the case. We also know, as people think about reopening, that requires maybe different capital that's not relief capital. So I think as we get kind of into this next phase, making sure that we're still telling the story of how you are all being hit by this, and when funding sources are ending, and how that's going to affect you moving forward into the next few months, especially as we get through the winter and we're not able to do things outdoors. I think we need to think a little bit about how we're telling that story in this kind of transition time, because, there's some kind of like logic fatigue about what's happening and how to talk about it. And, we're not out of the period of needing to really talk about relief. So I'm sure that's something, Emily, that you're thinking about also.
Yes, that is something. And Erica, you raise an interesting point in the chat. So Erica says liquor license they're not offering any breaks for 2021, but most of us won't be using that license. So those are the super specific, not sort of big, sexy, splashy, like bazillion-dollar relief fund, but makes an actual difference. And so if there are other examples of these that you are coming across, let's chat about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that one, Erica. Great.
I also
Any other
up in the chat
questions?
really
Oh,
quick.
yeah, go ahead.
Julia Ryan mentioned another relief fund that just opened with the New England Musicians Relief Fund. The link is in the chat. I'll also put that in the recap email as well. But just to share with your networks, if anyone knows of people, it's in the chat right now. But I'll share it in an email upcoming very soon.
Yes, Boston Cultural Council grants due December 14th. Please apply for all the money, apply for the MCC money. Great. All right, well, if that is all, thank you everybody for spending time together today. Thanks to Ceci and Chandra and Abigail and Pascal and Christina and Emily. I hope everybody has a good weekend and we'll be in touch. Thank you.